The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, everybody, we'll get started in about 3 or 4 minutes, and I'll put everybody back on mute. Good morning, and welcome to the webinar. This morning, we're joined by Evan Altman of Golden Rule. He'll be giving us an overview of their current short-term and ancillary offerings. And you know the drill, your phones are on mute. We'll answer your questions at the end of the presentation. Just type them in the chat box and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. Some information about Cornerstone. Cincinnati, Ohio. Been in business for 30 years. Specializing group, individual. We have a referral program called the Agency Services Program. I'll get into that in a little bit. Compliance, marketing and communications. That's our team that puts all these slides together and puts all these presentations and emails together. And I do want to point out that we're now celebrating 30 years in the business, and we've done it again for the 4th consecutive year. We have been named as one of Cincinnati's top places to work. Here's my information. Take a moment, jot down my phone number, my email address. If you have any questions about quoting, benefit information, customer service, how to submit business, give me a shout. And Sandy Weber, she's indispensable. There's her phone number. She's our licensing guru, and with all the new licenses and information coming out, she is indispensable. Joyce Feinauer in commissions. Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have a referral program called the Agency Services Program. Give me a call if you have a question about that. So you can earn some money by referring business to us. In many cases, you're dealing with a client out of state, or perhaps you don't have this certification or that certification, and our team can help you out. So absolutely give us a call in that regard. And I do want to point out, we've got some programs, some incentive programs coming up. Here's a big one. This is the one that we just sent out. That's me in the hammock. This is an incentive program we're rolling out for OEP. And this is for business with an effective date of January 1. And we want you to register for this. And give me a shout. You can actually go on our website and register. You can give me a call, and then I'll get you registered. Everybody should have received an email for this contest. Very, very doable benchmarks. 10 contracts, you get $10 per contract. Let's say you sell 20, you get $200. So very reasonable, very doable benchmarks for 2019 business, and we hope you take advantage of this. And another thing to point out, if you sell 10 or more medical contracts with a Jan 1 effective date, we'll throw your hat in the ring for a trip to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. So hit the beach with Cornerstone. And another important incentive program to bring up is Evans, and he'll probably touch on that. That's the Cash Infusion webinar, or Cash Infusion contest. And he'll tell you more about it, but it has to do with Protector, Health Protector. He'll get into that, and short-term business submitted between July 1 and October 31st. So earn cash with Golden Rule. Okay. And then getting back, here's information about Evan. Take a moment, jot down his email address. Lifelong Hoosier, lives in the Indianapolis area in Brownsburg. And he must have really enjoyed this past weekend when his Cubs beat up on my Reds 4 straight games. That was something else. What'd you think of that, Evan?
I wasn't too upset about that. I was pretty happy it was payback because the Reds got a 4-game sweep of the Cubs a while back in Cincinnati that I was unfortunately present for. To watch a pitcher hit a grand slam, so it was worthwhile.
Okay. And through the magic of technology, I'm going to toss the screen to you.
Awesome.
And I see your screen now, so we're ready to go.
Awesome. All right. Great. So first of all, thanks everybody for taking some time here. I'm sure that a lot of you are probably here because of some of the changes that we've been made aware of as far as the short-term business. So I definitely want to address some of that here. And certainly I'm going to share with you as much as kind of we know at this time. There will be more information that's going to continue to come out about this. And we are getting very close, obviously, and it's hard to believe. Here we are right on the precipice of September. So we're only about a month away from the short-term stuff kind of going back into effect with some longer durations. Again, I'm going to share with you what I know about that. And I certainly want to get into some of our other products as well, because I think there's going to continue to be a really, really good market for those, if not even better in some instances than what we've got right now. We've also got some other things being developed, some other products in the works, some updates going on. So stick with us through some of this stuff, because this isn't just a matter of, October 2nd, and then that's going to open up this whole new world, and then that's how it's going to be. There will be kind of some ongoing changes, and we're going to continue to try to update things and to be that carrier that you can continue to work with, moving forward for all your needs. So, when I look at this stuff, and I think the biggest thing throughout all this change, right, and that's if you've been in this industry for more than 5 months, you've probably seen some pretty major changes one way or the other. But I think what's really important is when you pair up with someone, again, whether it be Cornerstone, who's been in the business for a long time, right, a very solid company, I think as the name even indicates. UHC is one of those as well. And when we're talking about the insurance industry and we're talking about all the changes that have taken place, you want a carrier that's going to have the brand name, the size, the strength. We've been there throughout all these changes. It's a name your clients recognize. It's a name I would hope you recognize. And you can be sure that we're going to continue to come out with some really good products and to be able to kind of weather any of these changes that come out. So, whether it's our industry experience, we're obviously highly rated, and just able to kind of go through all these little things. So what we're really going to talk about today in particular is obviously our short term. I'm going to talk about our Health Protector Guard fixed indemnity products. I'm going to talk about our Accident Protector Guard, because that's a fairly new one for us, and that's got both the HPG and APG plans are going to have some real value props that are a little bit distinctive when we're talking about what else is out there in the industry, in that market for either accident, critical illness, fixed indemnity, and how that pairs up. But as far as the short term, what we're getting into first, right, and this is a big one. So when we're talking about this, our footprint right now, and the reason I'm putting this out there to you now is to kind of give you a look at this, and when I show these generations, that really doesn't make too much of a difference. It is kind of the plan types. But what I do want to point out is when this goes to an extended duration, when this changes, and this will be on October 2nd, you're not going to see a change in the actual plan structure. If you've been quoting our short-term plans lately, what you've been seeing is some states give the availability of pairing up and doing a 3x2, if you will. And some of them will only allow 3 months at a time. The plan structure is not going to change. What is going to change is the duration only. And a lot of that is because we only had a very short run-up when you think about the time that it takes to refile plans, do that. Now, I want to let you know right up here up front, we are working to develop a new generation of short-term products. So we are going to have some new stuff that you're probably going to see in the not-too-distant future. Not going to be ready, I would say, for this open enrollment, but something that we're going to be looking at, how can we better leverage some of these new changes in the regulations, what can we do? And we're always looking to try to make things better and newer anyway. So that is some stuff that's going on. But as far as what we've got coming out, like right now, like I said, it will be the same suite of products. It's just going to extend. Now, as far as what those durations are going to be, while we certainly can't say absolutely everywhere, think about what we had previously, and by and large, it's going to fall along those same lines of some states allowed up to 6 months of coverage and some allowed up to 12, or give or take. There were a few, maybe some days different here and there. Those should be very, very similar. Now, there are, again, with this new regulation, individual states have the opportunity to kind of make some differentiation in there. So some of them could set their own rules a little differently from others. In keeping with all that as well, they all need to go in and approve a new disclaimer that was required by the federal regulations. So we are still waiting on some approvals in there. As of now, we've got 11 states that are approved. And we expect that to grow tremendously here in the next month plus. So that's going to continue changing. If we look at those, again, I know Ohio is one that's probably important to you. That is not one of them that we have right now. We do show Indiana in there, our biggest states in terms of Texas, Florida, Georgia. Those three are all approved, and those are at 360 days right now. I'm not going to run through the whole list of those right here because, again, we expect that list to continue to grow and change. So probably as we get closer, certainly stay in contact with myself. I will be sharing this stuff with the folks at Cornerstone as well, so that we can get that information out to you. But at the risk of kind of belaboring this point, I want to get into some more of the product details, certainly. But you should be able to start quoting those, we hope, right, mid next month at some point. I'm not going to give you a specific date because I don't want to provide something or give you a date that we can't live up to, but our expectation is here within the next few weeks, you will be able to start quoting those ahead of that. Certainly we want to give you a little bit of run up to that 10-2 date, so you're not just sitting there on October 2nd kind of queuing people up and hoping to get that set. So certainly should be able to get some of your clients taken care of. Again, just extending the durations on the plans we currently have, and then we'll be discontinuing the 3x2 strategy because we will have longer plans at that point. We will still have, again, the next day effective date, although, again, once the quoting opens up, you'll be able to quote them for a start date of 10-2 or later. Again, you would have to have a start date of 10-2 or later in order to get the longer duration. So just to make that point there. Sticking with the simplified underwriting, right, that's going to still be in there. And like I said, we're really, really excited about what the future holds for this market, and you will see some changes to that. You will see us coming out with some new products here, probably looking at Q1 of next year. How quickly can we get these filed and approved and really get that footprint out there. But this is a market we're really, really excited about because getting back into that with those longer durations, better coverage for folks. And, the big thing that's always been there with us, and kind of showing you this right here, and the reason I show you this, even though I said short-term 3x2 would not be available, when you think about it, if you look at those states in yellow, we can probably anticipate that most or all of those, maybe in addition to some other ones, are not going to be at that full 12-month type of duration. And it's entirely possible that, again, as we move forward into some new products, these are some that you'll see that may have some limits to them one way or the other. So just to kind of give you, again, a thought of what the future might hold. And then as far as back-to-back policies, again, I show this because as we're looking to do this, right, this is 3x2 kind of did this, but in the past, again, when you think of longer durations, if you're used to selling those, even if it was 6 months, 12 months, whatever the case may be, most states did allow you to just continually rewrite them back-to-back. Most, not all. So again, those are some things that are still going to be in play as we move forward. Given that we're all, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us are probably Midwesterners here. I know Illinois is one to put out there, and there's still some flux there, and it's entirely possible that they will not allow short-term plans to be written back-to-back. That, to the best of my knowledge, has not been completely decided yet. There's a bill there in the state that may limit that and have some different requirements in it. So again, stay tuned on that. That's Illinois in particular. What I really wanted to look at here, though, and this is the big thing that I continue to bring out, right? Because I know that you've got different options out there for your short-term coverage. Where are you going to put your clients? What's in their best interest? And especially as we look, so it's one thing, right, when we were looking at 3-month durations, and we kind of chop those up, and the prices are a little bit lower because the duration's not very long. And really what we were kind of looking at is how can I best string these together? We had a 3x2. Other carriers might have had a 3x4. And you think, okay, there's a little more security in that duration. And that's great. Once we go out, though, again, to 6 months and 12 months, you're looking at a few different things. We're talking about a plan with a little more permanence, right? We're talking about higher potential for claims. We're talking about, the need for someone or the desire for someone to have a little bit of longer coverage. And what's really going to come into play there at that point is the network. That's the strongest thing that we can offer. That is our greatest, that's the biggest, widest, strongest plank in our value platform is our United Healthcare Choice Network. It's the broadest in the country across any level, certainly in the short-term market. And you're talking about access to 1 million healthcare professionals, 6,000 hospitals, big network discounts. And so being able to get access to that network is the major reason you'd really want to get into these, especially when we're talking about those folks going for 12 months at a time, right? The claims experience is higher, and they're going to get a much, much better experience, much better network on that than they're going to be able to find on any other short-term product that is out there. I will guarantee that. And so that's the one thing I continue to push for. So, as you're looking at what makes the most sense for me to offer to my clients, I can only put this out there. And I know there are going to be some differences, right? I know not every carrier is identical. But when you're talking about our plan benefits and what they bring, and I know I hammer that point and I repeat it over and over, but I do so because it is really, really important at the end of the day to give your clients the security. Because really, when we are talking about a short-term plan, the downside of it is the name itself indicates it is a short term. But that also means you're probably going to have to go back and rewrite that once or twice or maybe more and have some other products on there. So, at the end of the day, it's not about making one sale. It's about making that second and that third and that fourth sale, which is going to be a little bit easier to do when you're setting them up with a product like this that has such a strong network. So really one of those things that is not just a, no pun intended, but it's not just a short-term solution. Now, if we want to look at these, what I want to show you here, and this could vary a little bit, right? 2018, so far this year, through August here, we have only had the 3-month duration plan. So this is probably subject to change as we go forward, because you are going to see, and I should note that in those states where we have a longer duration, the longest up to 12 months, you are going to see a price load that takes place on those, right? Because a 3-month plan is such a short plan that there's not much of there's no price difference, for each of those, whether you pair two of them together or, do them back to back, the price is a little bit lower. We do have a durational load that kicks in from 7 months and beyond. So you do see some differences in that regard. That said, when we look at our top states here, look at that down the middle, and we'll look at the two sides here in a little bit, roughly 46%, almost half of our total short-term sales come from those top 5 states. Now, obviously, there's a couple of those that you see, as we mentioned, between Ohio and Illinois. Those are a couple of our big ones. Texas and Florida, another couple of the big ones. So, again, Texas and Florida, we do have approved. Those will go to 360 days as of October 2nd. Illinois, I know, has approved the disclaimer, but has some stuff in the bill right now. And, again, Ohio, we do not have approval on the disclaimer yet, but expect to have that fairly soon. Tennessee also not approved. Again, we do expect that. If we look at the plan types, you look at that, the copay is the most expensive, so it's the smallest little sliver there. And if you look at the other ones, they're kind of divided in terms of price, right? The value is the least expensive, makes the most sales. Plus and Plus Elite, both they're fairly similar in pricing, fairly similar in sales. And if you look at the deductible, now one thing you will see is there is a greater trend kind of moving up the line. You see that $5,000 deductible has overtaken the $2,500, and we're seeing more of that move into those $10,000 and $12,500 deductibles. So we are seeing more of those things move up that way. A big part of that as well, right, moving to those higher deductible short-term plans, has to do with the fixed indemnity. And I would recommend that in a lot of places. We'll talk about that fixed indemnity here in a little bit, that if you can pair up so the short-term becomes such a great option at a longer duration, because now I can use that as a really, really significant tool to limit my overall out-of-pocket exposure. So these short-term plans, they give us great network access, right? So let's think about that, great network access. And if I go with that higher deductible, and I'll get into the details of the fixed indemnity so you see maybe a little bit more how this makes sense. A fixed indemnity plan is going to pay me, deductible free, right? There's no deductible there. It's first dollar coverage. It's going to pay those benefits to me on a first dollar basis to meet those claims. And because these are separate plans that don't coordinate benefits together, the short-term plan doesn't care what something else is paying. Everything that comes to me, every benefit that comes to me from that Health Protector Guard, that's also going to my deductible on my short term, right? It's going toward all that. So really what I can do then is pair up a short term, get a higher deductible at a lower price, pair that up with a fixed indemnity, maybe somewhere in the mid-range, and that FI plan is going to help me to meet my deductible in the short term. Now, on the fixed indemnity front, there's never a point where those run out. There's no benefit cap, so they'll continue to pay benefits throughout. But there's also not a lifetime max in terms of what or an out-of-pocket max, I should say. So if I run into some really massive claims, I could keep having to pay out on that, even though it's also paying me. The short-term plan, however, does have an out-of-pocket max. And so what I can do is have that so one plan is paying me up front and the other plan is covering me on the back end in a stop-loss type of a feature and giving me access to this great network. So I just want to put that out there. I really do think as these durations get longer, it actually makes more sense to be able to kind of pair these plans together in tandem to really give your client some great coverage. So that guides me into the Health Protector Guard coverage. And again, as we're going through this stuff, I want to go through this fairly quickly so I can leave some time at the end for any questions. And certainly you can feel free to contact myself or to get through the folks at Cornerstone, as you get additional questions that come along. So, I do, again, want to open this up at the end for some of that. As I mentioned on the HPG plans here, these are guaranteed renewable, right? So that's one advantage. The short-term plans are not guaranteed renewable. Those do have, again, a set duration that eventually will expire and you'd have to reapply. But we've got a really large footprint here, pretty much overlaps at least with the short term. No lifetime maximum benefits. Pre-existing conditions are going to be covered after 12 months, which they can't be on a short term because the short term doesn't run for 12 months, or at least beyond 12 months. You can use any doctor or hospital here. Now, it is tied into the multi-plan network. It has access to multi-plan, but you are not required. The benefits do not change one way or the other. And what's nice about that is, and multi-plan is a solid network, right? It's really, really good. But the Choice network is even bigger. So if we're talking about being able to pair this up with the Choice network, not only are you getting discounts from Choice, you're still getting the full benefit of this Health Protector Guard. So if I have the short term and the HPG together, that much better. I win both ways. As I mentioned before, no coordination of benefits. And it's always funny to say that. I always bring this up. When you say no coordination, it sounds like a negative thing. That's not the case at all. What that means, again, for those who aren't as familiar with it, coordination of benefit implies that if I have two different plans, they kind of know it's sort of the left hand knows what the right is doing. If they coordinate, the one is saying, oh, well, that plan over there took care of that claim, so I don't have to, or I only have to cover what's in excess of what that one covered. When it says no coordination, that means they're both counting toward that claim. And so, again, if I have a short-term plan and I have a claim that comes up and I have an HPG plan, they're both working in conjunction there. The HPG is going to pay you benefits. It'll go toward the deductible and co-insurance on the short term as well. So big things to think about there. Lots of different coverage points in this. Age 18 to 64 eligibility, so very similar to the short term in that regard. Big value props. We're going to hit on a couple of these. Rollover doctor office visits, increasing injury reimbursement, and then we've also got the tiered surgical schedule. So one thing I want to show you here at the bottom, and I know the print might be kind of small, depending on what you're viewing this on, but we're looking at an average premium, around $150 per member per month, and we've seen about 1.5, 1.6 members, somewhere in that neighborhood. So you're looking at about $230 average. So if you think about something like that, and again, if you can price that short term right, we're looking at maybe $400 a month between the two of those together, which is certainly not cheap, right? That's not the easiest thing in the world, but much, much less expensive than some of the other major medical products that are out there. And so much easier to get someone in there. And depending on age, obviously that's going to shift around a little bit too, but we can definitely get them some good coverage and, take care of that out-of-pocket exposure. Rather than kind of look through this and read through a bunch of these things, I do want to jump into these other things real quick, but I will say this. We are showing, and this is kind of down toward the bottom of these bullet points, the average persistency on these. And again, these products have only been around for a little over a year. With us, this specific product of ours has only been on the market for about 13 months, a little bit longer. And so a lot of these are projections, but we're showing that these are really sticking around, which tells us two things. Right. Well, the one thing it really tells us is that you're going to continue to be able to be paid for a long time if these things stick around for a while. But the other thing is the big problem with any plan, and a fixed indemnity product in particular, is that the persistency isn't really great because people expect these to be, they're used to insurance, the way insurance works. And a lot of fixed indemnity products out there are not very robust. They don't really work the way people think they're supposed to. And I'm not saying they don't work the way that they were explained or they don't work the way they were built. It's that people aren't used to the way they work. And so when they go to use it and it doesn't do what they think it's supposed to, a lot of times they will end up canceling. And that's why you normally see fairly short durations on some of these limited medical or mini med plans that have been out there. So when you're talking about a product that's sticking around for 15 to 18 months on average, that is showing us that people, when they go to use it, are having a better experience with it. It is working properly. It does make sense. And so they are willing to stick with it a little bit longer. So just kind of something to consider there, as we're looking at, and as we're thinking, okay, well, that plan's going to last a while. Now we got the short term, again, lasting 12 months in some cases, or at least 6. And I can write those back to back. I can pair those things together, really give somebody good coverage. So I do want to point that out. As we're looking at these products, though, some of the changes we've made, and what I want to point out with the stuff in the red here is those plans were not a part of the portfolio when we initially rolled this out. And so those have been some changes that we've implemented kind of on the fly as we've noticed, what are people asking for? What do people want to see in these plans? And I want to point that out as part of a bigger strategy. So when we are, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at short-term plans, make some changes to those, get some new products out there for you. I'm going to talk about a new dental line that we've got coming out. We'll talk about this new APG. We're trying to be much more innovative with our product portfolio and get you the types of plans that make sense, that you can sell, that your clients want, and that just, again, that makes sense in today's market. So I will just point that out there. But what I want to show you here, so these products come anywhere from 2 up to 10 office visits. And this is per person, per year. We've also got a rollover benefit on these where members can roll up to 5 unused office visits over to their next year's available benefits. Now, the most they could roll at a time is 5 visits, and the most visits they could have in any given year is 10. But again, this is based on the way people use their insurance. So we wanted to kind of build in some of those benefits. We look at little things, wellness and preventive goes up to $250 a year. Some of these I'm going to go through fairly quickly because, again, I do want to respect your time and leave some more time out there. If there are some in-depth stuff, certainly I'll have some time for questions, or if you want to contact me afterwards, we can certainly go through some of those things as well. But when we're also looking at what I really wanted to point out here, not so much the outpatient treatment, the surgical services. Here's another one I wanted to look at for a couple different reasons. One, you'll notice that the surgical schedule is the same across all the plans. I think that's important because when we are talking about some of those larger claims, it's nice that even if someone's budget calls for them to go with more of a value-based plan, they can keep that same surgical schedule, right? They're not subject to some bigger exposure because they're on a less expensive plan. But what I also want to point out is that this applies to both in and outpatient surgery. The reason that's important, a lot of products that are out there do differentiate, right? They've got like a cap on outpatient, which, normally is fine. Most outpatient surgeries are fairly, I don't want to necessarily say minor, but they are less expensive, less invasive, what have you. But when we're talking about medical advances and being able to do things like a laparoscopic surgery where you're having an appendectomy, some joint replacements can be done on an outpatient basis. So what you don't want is to be stuck with only a $500 benefit or something like that on a major outpatient surgery like a joint replacement. So again, this is based on the type of surgery in terms of, is it more invasive? Are there other things going on? Is it general anesthesia? That sort of stuff. So the more major surgeries are in tier 1. Now, I will say that somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 90% of the surgeries that come across actually do fall into that tier 4 category, right? They're mostly fairly minor. And so there's not that big a deal. I shouldn't say it's not a big deal, but those are most of them that we see, and they fall within that tier 4 category. So that's mostly what we experience. When we're talking about the inpatient, there we go. I won't leave this up there for too terribly long, but again, as you look at those, tier 4, local, regional, anesthetic, some, minor invasive endoscopic stuff like that. Now, here's the thing: if we go up to tiers 2 and 1, we're talking about hip and knee replacement, rotator cuff. We're talking about heart, brain, lungs on tier 1, organ transplant. Obviously, $10,000 isn't going to come close to putting a dent in the claim on that. But let's think back to what I was talking about earlier. Let's say we've got a short-term plan, and God forbid something like this happens, right? But we've got a short-term plan with a $10,000 deductible. And I've got this fixed indemnity product, and I do have something really terrible come up. And I've got to have this tier 1 type of a surgery. Well, this is going to pay me $10,000, not just for that, but clearly I'm going to be in the hospital for a few days. There's going to be benefits for that. There's going to be some other things that are going to pay out. Well, my short-term product has a $10,000 deductible, and maybe it's got a few grand in co-insurance as well. But the fixed indemnity product is clearly going to pay enough to meet that deductible and that co-insurance. And now the short-term is kicked in, and it's covering those costs above that. And so now I've met this and could conceivably, even for a very major problem that has come up, a very major procedure with big claims, I may have covered my entire out-of-pocket exposure as a result of pairing these two plans together. So just something I'll point out there again. Looking at this very quickly, I want to go through the hospital, the inpatient benefit, and as you'll see on these, it has a certain amount that it starts with, and that remains the same for illness-related hospital confinement. But if I do have, based on injury, each year that I'm on this plan, my actual per-day hospital rate will go up by 25% to the point where it'll actually double over time. As you see, the ICU or CCU benefit is double the initial face amount and remains as such. There are some limits to how many days that'll pay out, but that is in addition to. So just to use the easy math and go over to the side, if I'm on the Premier Plus, $10,000 a day for ICU, and that is in addition to the $5,000 a day I'd be getting for my base rate, or perhaps even more if I've been on this plan for a while. So as you can see, it's a little bit larger. Now, you will also notice those red plans, primary preferred, the select preferred, you do see that the ICU benefit is a little bit lower on those, and that's kind of a common theme as you look through those plans a little bit more. Those are skewed toward, they have the highest wellness benefit, they have the most office visits, and so we really, in order to add some of those quote-unquote upfront benefits, we kind of took away from the back-end more catastrophic type of benefits. So just as you're looking through that, you see that stuff. That's what you'll notice there. So they do get a card with these, right? They get the multi-plan. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna bust in here and kind of take a step back. Those of you who have sold our short-term plans may have had a lament at some point or another that there are no cards. There's no network cards that they get with those. That should be changing. We hope that'll be the case. That is our goal, to have those cards reinstated once we go to a longer duration. So I'll throw that out there on the short term. People love having cards, right? Not going to go through everything on this benefit, but just to kind of give you an idea, right, of what these things could do. And I put this number 2. I took out number 1 scenario because it's actually a little bit smaller. This is more dramatic and highly unlikely. But you can see how on these plans they could pay several $100,000 in benefits for a really major claim. And again, that's where I keep going back to that short term and kind of pairing those things together so that I've actually completely met this person's out-of-pocket needs. And we're also talking about something that that has a fairly low premium. So overall, really excellent benefits on that. When we're looking, and this is very similar to what we saw on the short-term plans, you do generally see a skew toward the lower-priced products. That's fairly obvious. We look at the states, very, very similar in terms of our top states. Florida, Texas, Illinois are both up there. But a couple other ones. Michigan is in there, right? Ohio, a little bit down, closer to the bottom. We need to bring that up. I think that's down there. But I guess it could be one of those things where folks in Ohio are, they're used to the Reds being at the bottom of the National League Central, and so
easy now.
So we have Ohio here, but it's still number 12. So it's 12 out of 36. So that's not bad. So there's some stuff again on the HPG, and what I want to talk about here now is our accident protector guard, and I'm going to try to be somewhat quick on this one, because there's a lot of details to it. But what I really want to point out here is some of the value props about this product that I think are going to be better in terms of what you find out there in the market, what else you see that kind of has an action. We have a critical illness component to this, some things I think can help your clients out quite a bit. Now, you'll notice if you go to quote these, that there are kind of three different versions of it, right? And the accident expense guard is just again, it's an accident medical expense. It's a guaranteed issue product. So lower benefit levels is accident coverage with AD&D. So pretty basic. Again, that's the accidental death and dismemberment. Pretty simple. There's an accident pro gap that is the simplified issue. And that's going to be more if you do have those folks who are on an ACA type product who, maybe they still have a little bit of room in the budget, which good for them if they do, my goodness. But even if they do have that, if they have that room, what they may not have room for is the ability to meet, and that's the trouble with it is you're already paying a bunch of premium, but then you've also got a fairly high out-of-pocket exposure. And so how do you meet that gap there? And that's what really this is meant to do, is cover that gap in their out-of-pocket exposure up to and including their deductible, their co-insurance, and so forth. So again, it's accident coverage with the AD&D. It's got optional matching critical illness and optional hospital admissions. So they kind of add some of those things in there. Then we've got the Accident Pro Guard, which are really our biggest seller, kind of fits in that middle. And again, this is one of them that fits more along. It can kind of be bolted on to the HPG products we just talked about and or the short term. And that's really in there. Again, there's depending on what benefit levels you choose, it can be either guaranteed issue, it's at the lower end of the benefit scale. So that we're talking accident, AD&D, critical illness at lower dollar figures. The simplified issue is going to be your accident and CI at higher values, right? And so this is one that we've got out there. We've been pretty aggressive in getting this out, and really feel pretty excited about it. And a big reason for this, and the accident coverage is pretty basic, right? If you have a claim that results from an accident, it'll pay out. As we talked about with the HPG, no coordination of benefits. So when we are pairing these things up, we are talking about, especially once those short terms, again, they go to longer durations, higher likelihood for some of these claims to pop up. Accidents tend to really be a big part of why these claims come in. And so, these will help you to meet that deductible, help to cover that cost that normally you'd be in there. Other areas where this could really pay off, though, right, when we're looking at these things, where some accident products out there do require you to have medical coverage in conjunction with them. This does not. Both the accident and the CI coverage can last up to age 70. So if you are working in that market, if you do have anybody in the senior market, there is some room up there. Obviously, the prices get higher as you get older, certainly. So there is that as far as affordability. But it's also something that can kind of bridge that gap and last through that time. AD&D is the same for children as it is for primary spouse, so that'll cover in there. But I do want to look at this too. The very bottom one in that blue section in the lower left, we will issue this up to age 64. Most other carriers, when we're talking about accident and CI, they only go up to age 59 on the issue. So you do have a little bit more, that 5-year window. So if you are working with the senior market or kind of that tweener market, if you will, it does go up a little higher. Now, as far as the critical illness, this is true critical illness coverage, not just a cancer, heart, stroke type of a product, right? So we have 14 different triggers in terms of our covered conditions. Each one of those is its own separate category. Okay, so and the reason that's important is because this is going to pay up to 3 triggers. So whatever face amount you choose could pay up to 3 times. Now, ideally, again, I was looking at it this way, we don't want to have that happen. Certainly, you wouldn't want your client to have to go through 3 specific events like that. But if it's even things that are within the same kind of heart-related issues, this could still pay out for those. So it's not just saying heart. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Evan, just want to break in real quick. Some people are mentioning that there's difficulty with the sound. If you're able to hear me loud and clear, just send me a quick note in the question bar, if you would mind. Okay, so it looks like it might be, okay, we're back. Okay, our sound is good now. Okay, I'm back on, thanks.
Oh, good, excellent, okay. So, again, just to kind of show you, and I'll show some specifics in there of those, of those triggers here in a little bit, but really when we look at, again, these multiple benefits that we've got across these, so I talked earlier about the Accident Pro Guard, that's that guaranteed issue. So you only have kind of a couple of different options there, relatively low. Over on the right is that Accident Pro Gap that I talked about, and that one has overall kind of lower amounts, really aimed again at covering that gap to the deductible of an ACA type product. And then in the middle, we have our Pro Guard, which can be, if you're on the low end, it's a guarantee issue. If you're on the high end of the benefits, it's a simplified issue. And that's where we have, as you can see on there though, that's got much, much higher benefits, specifically on the critical illness benefit. And that's really the big one for that. So as I kind of look at these, I'm going to skip through some of these specific examples because that gets into it a little maybe too much. I don't want to get us in the weeds too much there. But what I want to kind of bring us to here is showing you a little bit on what the actual, oops, I'm sorry, I think I just skipped past it. I'll come back. Let me back that up. This is kind of giving an example on what those benefits are. When I talked about those 14 triggers, you can look at that there in the middle. You can see those things there. So it is, obviously we do have heart attack, stroke, and cancer, but you do see a bunch of other options in there, and those would all trigger a payout of that critical illness benefit that, again, you saw earlier, goes up to the $50,000. So it could be a total of $150,000 if I had that benefit. Certainly a bunch of other little things in there. So what we wanted to do was kind of pair this up, make this more robust than what they're going to find out there with other carriers and other products, and also give an option that that makes sense from a price perspective that I could add in. And this is the pricing here reflects a 35-year-old married couple, and so as you can see, and I know it seems odd that that the one on the right, the Pro Gap, seems like it's got 4 different things versus 3, and you think, well, that'd be more expensive. But as you recall, our limits are much lower on that, and again, that is meant to be kind of a lower price to bolt on to maybe the ACA type coverage, whereas the one in the middle there, we are talking about some higher benefits, but still relatively good price if I am looking to pair that with another form of coverage. So just as a quick example, kind of look at if we paired up an HPG with an APG, and the pricing for these is going to be very, very similar across the country. So I know I have a rate here that shows for Florida, but it shouldn't be very, very different regardless of where I am. So kind of take that for what it's worth there. But if we're looking at sort of the mid-range, that Health Protector Card, select value, I'm kind of on the right side of the tab there. It's got the $3,000 hospital benefit, 5 annual doctor office visits, and then I put on that Accident Pro Guard. I'm looking at about $350. Now you can imagine I could tweak those a little bit, and then I could maybe bring in again maybe a short-term plan that I could bring in here for a couple $100, and I'm still looking around $550, which is not cheap by any stretch, but I'm much less expensive than what I'm going to find out there from a guaranteed issue ACA type product. And if you recall from all those examples, I've given somebody a product that's going to pay a lot of those upfront benefits for both major and minor claims, especially if I have that APG that's covering critical illness and big accidents. I've got the HPG that's covering my office visits, my hospital stays, should those come up. And then I have the short-term plan that's giving me access to the Choice Network and the protection of that stop-loss coverage at the backside. So there are a lot of different ways that we can kind of pair these things up. As far as other ancillary products, we've got a little bit of everything, right? We've got dental, we've got vision, we've got the hospital plans, we've got accident, critical illness, term life critical illness. We've got a dental 50 plus, and that's what I want to get into and kind of show you here really quickly. So the dental plans right now, this is our widest footprint. We've got 44 different states easily our number one selling ancillary. Now, the third bullet point you see on there says 4 plan options, and that's great, and that's what it is now. But when we roll here to about a month and a half from now, looking at mid-October, we're going to roll a new suite of dental plans. And we've been developing this for quite a while. And so we're kind of in those end stages of it. We're getting these files, getting these approved. And what we really wanted to do was spread out what we've been taking and get this to a better variety, to where we've got kind of one round of products. You know, if you've sold our dental in the past, you probably know the most expensive ones are such because they have a little bit better coverage for out-of-network dentists. Well, what we wanted to do was take that same concept of getting a broader access and being a little more amenable to the out-of-network, but move that to the lower price type of product. So the folks whose budget did not afford them the ability to go for the higher price plans, get that, because we know the network access is not always the easiest with dentists. So we can move those lower price plans and give a little bit better access to those. But there's a lot of people, myself included, with my 12-year-old daughter and soon my 10-year-old son, that they need some orthodontia. So we will have plans that give orthodontic coverage. We're going to have higher annual maximums as far as coverage on the plans. We're going to have some that are catered specifically toward the more senior market that include not only dental, but vision and some hearing discounts and services as well. And so you're going to find a broader spectrum of plans catered to different markets. So again, if any of you are in that senior market, you're going to have some products there. If you're looking for something that's a little bit less expensive, but that still gives somebody good access, you're going to find that. If you need something that does cover orthodontics, is going to give you some higher benefits, you're going to find that. So those things are all coming to your door very, very shortly as well, and we'll have a lot more detail on those, but I want to prime you up for that. That's going to be mid-October. We're going to be starting to roll those. And then the last thing I'll share with you is just kind of looking at our top bundles. Clearly, as I just mentioned, dental vision, that's a really easy bundle for us. But if you start looking at those, like, gosh, look at those next 3. Fixed indemnity with dental, fixed indemnity with accident, fixed indemnity with dental and vision. So you're seeing that FI product really shift up to the top as we're selling more and more of those. Now, I do think this is going to shift, certainly as we come to a longer duration and short term kind of picks back up a little bit. And what I would really like to see is that number 8 plan make its way up closer to the top as well, as we can kind of pair those things together. But just a lot of different options out there. And that's if I can continue to impress upon you, just one kind of thought is that based on what we've got in our portfolio, and certainly what we will have, is just the ability to kind of mix and match and pair these things together and bundle them up to really provide your clients with the type of coverage that, it's not just, ideally it'll be budget friendly, certainly, but we don't want to do that at the expense of it feeling cheap, of it leaving them with a lot of loopholes. So that's really what we're looking to do, in addition to, again, just to be more innovative, right? We want to listen to what you're providing to us for feedback, what you need, what you want in these plans, what's selling, what are the people asking for, and we want to be able to develop those, again, in a way that makes sense for us with the United Healthcare brand that really fits with what we're about, and that again gives you the sense of security that if somebody's buying a product from us or from you through us, that it's something that they're going to want to stick with, and you're going to want to be able to sell again and again. So with that, I have kind of run through everything, and I know I covered a ton of information. I know there's a lot of things that I wasn't able to cover really in great detail here. And again, those are certainly things I'll be happy to address either right now or at whatever point in the future, if you want to reach out to me, or we can do this in another webinar as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Evan. Great presentation. And now we have some time for some questions. And again, just type them in the chat box and we'll go to them one at a time here. So first question is there a plan to include preventative in the short term? How would preventative work with a FI plan or a fixed indemnity plan?
Yeah, so we do hope so. Again, right now, the short-term products, and again, this varies by state. So I was try to be very, I don't want to say vague, but I want to be careful not to put anything out there. So the preventive coverage can vary by state. Some mandate it, some don't have any. Some of them vary. In general, the short-term plans will cover, so they won't pay directly for. They will consider it to be a covered expense for adults on, say, the routine cancer screenings. That's in general. Not all of them do. Some of them are a little bit different. Ideally, again, in that next generation that we're coming out with, that we hope to have out there, that will be a little bit more, a little bit broader coverage, a little bit better coverage on the preventive. On the fixed indemnity products, those are going to vary, but they will go up to $250 on a preventive benefit, and so that, again, that varies, kind of scales up, $100 to 200 to 250, depending on the plans that you have in there, and they do offer a preventive benefit. So let's just say, for instance, and again, these are totally made up numbers. So this is not something to take into the doctor and assume this will be how it is. But let's say it's we're looking at routine cancer screening. So we'll say it's like a PSA test or a mammogram or something like that. Throw those out there. If a short-term plan considers that a covered expense, what's going to happen there is it's going to apply the network repricing, and so I'm just going to make up a number and say it's a $500 charge, and it gets repriced to $250, about average, about a 50% discount via the Choice Network and the short-term plan. So it's $250, and if you submit that claim, then the fixed indemnity plan is going to pay. Let's say you've got the top-end plan with $250 preventive benefit, it would pay that $250. So again, what I want to point out on that, though, is the fixed indemnity products do not pay based on the cost of the claim. They pay based on the benefit amount that is listed there. So if I have a preventive visit and the charge is $100, that plan is going to pay me $250 because that's what that plan calls for. If the charge is $500, the plan is going to pay me $250 because that's what the plan calls for. That's what the benefit is. But if I use those in conjunction, again, they would both work together. But that should change a little bit in the future with the short term. Hopefully we have a little bit more. So I apologize if my answer was a little bit vague on that, but it does vary a little bit on the short term.
Okay, all right. Just want to point out, everybody will get a copy of this presentation. I'll put it in a YouTube format, so you'll be able to look at these slides as we go on. Next question. What states have 12-month as of now? And this is alluding to the short-term product and the the reform, the new law taking effect as of 10/1. And I believe you mentioned Texas as one of those. Are there some other states that have already signed on for 12 months?
Yes, so as of now, and these are states that have actually approved the additional disclaimer language we had to submit, and bear in mind we expect this to grow pretty significantly over the next month and change. But right now, 360-day approval: Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Texas, and West Virginia. There are some, Delaware, Indiana, Oklahoma are approved at 184 days, roughly 6 months. Missouri is at 6 months. And then Montana is at 123 days. For whatever reason, that's a fairly odd number, but that's like 4 months.
Okay, so you said Indiana was 180?
184, yes.
184, okay. Okay. Any idea maybe what Kentucky might do, or no clue?
Sure, to be quite honest.
What's your best guess on Ohio?
I would guess that Ohio bounces back to what were we at? Were we at 12 months, or were we only at 6 in Ohio?
You went from 6 to 12, but you were 12 for just right. You were 6 for a long time.
And then we did extend that like close to not too long before we got
kind
of cut back. I would anticipate that it'll go back to 12. I think those will fall more or less along the lines of what we had prior to April of 2017 when it all went to 3. So I would expect those states to fall back along those lines. By and large, if for no other reason than it's just simpler for them, and that's kind of what they had approved in the past. But yeah, that would be my guess. And Ohio is generally one that we've worked really well with, and so I would hope that we'll have some answers on that fairly shortly. But
Yeah.
12 would be my guess if you put me to it, but you never know.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Okay, so next question. Does the Health Protector Guard and Accident Protector Guard pay directly to the client, or does it pay to the provider?
That will depend, and it could do either or. In general, it will pay directly. However, if they go to a provider, whether that be a hospital or a doctor that is in that multi-plan network, they can assign their benefits just like they would, and that's not really anything active that they have to do necessarily, but just like you're used to on a regular major medical plan or on a short-term plan, anything kind of network-based, that claim is submitted by the provider to the carrier, and then the carrier, does the repricing and or pays the claim. Very similar. So if they do go to a multi-plan hospital or doctor, that claim can be submitted directly to us, and then we would pay that claim. And so how that would work then again is if the benefit is greater than the claim, let's say the doctor, they go in for a visit, and let's say again it's a preventive, let's say it costs $100, and the person has a plan with a $250 benefit. They submit that claim. We would pay $100 to the doctor, and then the remaining $150 we would pay directly to the client. So it could actually work in a variety of different ways. If they go to a doctor who's not in the network at all, not in multi-plan, then we would pay. The person would get that claim. They would submit it to us. We would pay the client directly.
Okay, sorry if you had that background noise. Okay, next question. Is the 6-month plan starting October 1st? So maybe you can answer to that.
October 2nd is when these will start. It's because, and the reason for that is that they actually filed, they came out with the ruling, but then did not officially file it until whenever that would have been, August 2nd. And so it was 60 days from that point. And so October 2nd will be the first date that the durations technically expand. So you'll be able to quote them before that, but it'll have to be an effective date of 10/2 or later to show that extended duration. So if you set it for 10/1, it's still only going to show you the 3-month durations.
Okay, and then just to follow up to that, this is alluding to short term again, Missouri, and what are the parameters for Missouri?
6 months.
Okay, 6 months. Okay, and just while we got a second here, I want to flip to the cash infusion. Do you mind if I do that?
No, go ahead. Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
I'm going to just show my screen real quick. And can you guys see my screen now?
I had it up in I was going to say I had that same thing up, and I neglected to put it in my presentation. So
can you see the screen now?
I can see it.
Okay, great. So everybody take advantage of this. If you haven't done so, please register for the Cash Infusion program. And if you still need the email, give me a shout. I'll send it back out to you. Really easy benchmarks here. Take advantage of this. Free money. Do what you're already doing and earn some cash. So
and we will. I do want to point out, and somebody might already have a question queued up for it, but certainly if you see on the right hand side, $50 for short-term 2x3, $25 for every short-term application. We are obviously 2x3 plans are going to be defunct, as of 10/2. So we will be rolling out some new stuff for you there because this does run through the end of October. So you're gonna have about 29 days there where those 2x3 plans won't matter, and so we will here shortly be kind of getting out some amended rules to that. I know they're working on some of those things now to sort of figure that out, because certainly we don't want to punish you for writing 6-month plans and 12-month plans. So expect to see a few more updates on that. I think, again, we want to kind of see what more states roll into this and how we get that all figured out. So again, be ready for some updates coming on that.
Okay, and just want to point out the new plans are going to be online only, correct? There's no paper app. Is that true? So
That should be the case.
You're doing away with paper apps as of October 2nd. So if you have any questions on how to do an online app, please reach out to me or reach out to Evan. It's super easy. It's the best website, I believe, of all the carriers. It's so intuitive. It literally takes 5 minutes to do a short-term app, and you can just crank them out. Any more questions? And I think with that, we'll conclude our presentation. I want to point out that you all will get a copy of the presentation. And Evan, I want to thank you for joining us today. And it was very informative. And I know I'll be going over this a couple of times to get all all the things that I missed and kind of go over them again. So certainly if you have any questions, give me a call. And with that, we'll conclude the presentation. Thank you.